How does a wrestler go from being Gunther's sidekick to becoming one of the most talked about stars in all of professional wrestling? Because if you asked WWE fans a few years ago about Ludwig Kaiser, most people would have said the same thing. Great talker, great wrestler, great presentation. But ultimately, he was standing behind somebody else. He was the man introducing Gunther. He was the man helping Imperium. He was the supporting character in somebody else's story. And honestly, that's what made Ludwig Kaiser's rise so unexpected. Nobody thought he would become one of WWE's biggest success stories in 2026. Nobody thought a comedy gimmick would change his entire career. Nobody thought fans in Mexico would embrace him more than the man who originally created the character. And nobody expected that a joke would eventually turn Ludwig Kaiser into one of the hottest names in wrestling. Yet somehow, that's exactly what happened. For years, Ludwig Kaiser felt like one of the most underappreciated talents in WWE. Whenever fans talked about Imperium, the conversation always revolved around Gunther. And honestly, it made sense. Gunther was winning championships, having classic matches, and becoming one of the most dominant stars WWE had seen in years. Meanwhile, Ludwig Kaiser was standing beside him, delivering introductions, helping tell the story, and making Gunther look even more important. The problem was that many fans never stopped to appreciate how valuable Kaiser actually was. Because if you watched closely, Ludwig Kaiser always had the tools. He had charisma, he had confidence, he had incredible promo ability, he had a unique personality, and perhaps most importantly, he understood how to make every segment feel bigger than it actually was. The issue wasn't talent, the issue was opportunity. For a long time, WWE simply didn't have a place for him as a single star. Whenever he wrestled, people were impressed. Whenever he talked, people paid attention. But then he would disappear back into the shadow of Gunther again. It became one of those situations where fans knew somebody was talented, but nobody could quite figure out when the breakthrough would happen. And then WWE accidentally stumbled into something that changed everything: the El Grande Americano gimmick. Now, let's be honest. When El Grande Americano first appeared, a lot of fans thought it was ridiculous. It was clearly designed as an over-the-top wrestling character. It was goofy, it was exaggerated, and initially many people saw it as nothing more than a fun side project. At the center of it all was Chad Gable. Chad embraced the character completely. He committed to the bit, he made people laugh, he made people curious, and slowly what started as a joke became surprisingly entertaining. But then something happened that nobody expected. The character started getting incredibly popular in Mexico, especially in AAA. Suddenly, El Grande Americano wasn't just a comedy gimmick anymore. Mexican fans were reacting to it. Crowds were getting invested, merchandise started moving, the reactions became louder every week, and that's when fate stepped in, because Chad Gable suffered an injury. Suddenly, WWE had a problem. The character was hot, the fans were invested, AAA had plans involving El Grande Americano, but the original performer couldn't continue. Someone had to take the mask, someone had to become El Grande Americano, and that someone was Ludwig Kaiser. Looking back now, that decision may have completely changed his career, because the moment Ludwig Kaiser put on the mask, something clicked. Maybe it was because he fully understood the theatrical side of wrestling. Maybe it was because his charisma translated perfectly into the role. Maybe it was because he treated the character seriously instead of treating it like a joke. Whatever the reason was, fans immediately noticed the difference. Suddenly, El Grande Americano felt bigger, more important, more entertaining, and more believable. And perhaps for the first time in his WWE career, Ludwig Kaiser wasn't standing behind somebody else. He was the attraction. He was the reason fans were tuning in. He was the center of the story, and the reaction started becoming impossible to ignore. Week after week, Ludwig's popularity grew, the crowd engagement grew, the social media clips exploded, the memes exploded, the merchandise improved, and slowly but surely, Ludwig Kaiser stopped being viewed as Gunther's former sidekick. He became a star in his own right. The crazy part is that things only got bigger when Chad Gable eventually returned, because most fans assumed Gable would simply take the gimmick back. After all, he was the original El Grande Americano. The character was his creation. The story should have ended there. Instead, WWE and AAA saw an opportunity. Why not make it part of the storyline? Why not turn it into a rivalry? Why not have the original El Grande Americano battle the new El Grande Americano? And just like that, one of the most fascinating stories in wrestling was born. Original versus replacement, creator versus successor, past versus present, mask versus mask. The buildup became absolutely incredible. Fans debated constantly about who the real El Grande Americano was. Some supported Chad Gable, some supported Ludwig Kaiser, and then came the biggest surprise of all. The Mexican audience overwhelmingly chose Ludwig Kaiser. Think about how unbelievable that sounds. A German wrestler portraying a character that originally belonged to an American wrestler somehow became the fan favorite in Mexico. Nobody could have predicted that, yet that's exactly what happened. The AAA crowds embraced Ludwig completely. His entrances received massive reactions. His promos connected with the audience. His matches received incredible praise. And suddenly, he wasn't just succeeding, he was thriving. The rivalry eventually led to the massive mask versus mask showdown at AAA's AAA's Noche de los Grandes, a match that many people expected to be good, but very few expected it to become historic, because once the bell rang, both men delivered something special. The storytelling was outstanding, the atmosphere was electric, the emotion was real, and by the end of the night, people were talking about it as one of the best matches of the entire year. The reviews were extraordinary, the praise was universal, and perhaps most shockingly, the match reportedly earned an incredible 5.75 star rating from Dave Meltzer. Think about that for a second. A match involving Ludwig Kaiser and Chad Gable exceeded the traditional 5-star scale. That's a rating higher than many WrestleMania main events, higher than many legendary matches, higher than countless bouts involving some of the biggest names in wrestling history. Whether you agree with star ratings or not, the message was clear. Ludwig Kaiser had arrived. He wasn't a supporting character anymore. He wasn't underrated anymore. He wasn't overlooked anymore. He was officially one of the hottest performers in wrestling. Of course, the journey wasn't completely smooth, because while all of this success was happening, Ludwig also found himself dealing with a very different challenge outside the ring. Reports emerged regarding a legal situation involving Kaiser following an alleged altercation in Florida. He was charged with a non-felony offense, posted bond, and entered a not guilty plea while the legal process continued. For many wrestlers, a situation like that can completely derail momentum. Questions begin appearing, opportunities disappear, momentum fades, but something interesting happened. The support system around Ludwig remained strong. One detail that received a lot of attention was the revelation that Gunther reportedly helped him by posting bond following the arrest. And honestly, that says a lot about the relationship between the two men, because despite no longer being paired together on television, the respect clearly remained, the friendship clearly remained, the loyalty clearly remained, and throughout the entire situation, Ludwig continued maintaining his innocence while continuing to perform at a high level inside the ring. More importantly, the fans never abandoned him, the momentum never disappeared, the character remained popular, the crowds remained invested, and that's usually a sign that audiences genuinely connect with a performer, not just a gimmick and not just a storyline. They connect with the performer himself. Today, Ludwig Kaiser finds himself in a position that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. He's successful in WWE, he's beloved in AAA, he's producing some of the best matches of his career, he's receiving the biggest reactions of his career, and perhaps most importantly, people are finally seeing what many fans believed all along, that Ludwig Kaiser was always talented enough to become a major star. He simply needed the right opportunity. Ironically, that opportunity came through a gimmick that many people initially laughed at, a gimmick that was supposed to be a joke, a gimmick that many fans expected to fail. Instead, it became the vehicle that transformed his entire career, and now the future looks brighter than ever, because Ludwig Kaiser has options. He can continue dominating as El Grande Americano, he can become one of AAA's biggest international attractions, he can return to WWE television as a major singles star, or maybe he can do both. For the first time in his career, Ludwig Kaiser isn't fighting for relevance, he's deciding what his next chapter looks like, and that's a remarkable position to be in. From being known primarily as Gunther's sidekick to becoming one of the most beloved stars in modern wrestling, Ludwig Kaiser's journey is proof that sometimes the biggest opportunities come from the places you least expect. A joke created a character created momentum, and that momentum created a star. But now the question is, are you happy seeing Ludwig Kaiser continue as the one and only El Grande Americano, or would you rather see Ludwig Kaiser return as Ludwig Kaiser and receive a massive singles push in WWE as himself? Let me know in the comments below.